Well, my name is Paul Volgel, and I have worked for United Nations mainly, not only here in Cambodia but elsewhere. But here in Cambodia I've also worked for the European Union many years ago, and that's about 30 years ago. At the time Cambodia had just started its first steps in the international community after a long period of war and a long period of sanction. At the time Cambodia was really a poor country, and the Cambodian people had really suffered from misery, the war, and also the sanctions that they endured. I was first working in Vietnam until 1991, and in 1991 Cambodia engaged into the peace process. A peace agreement was signed, and at the terms of these agreements, a transitional authority headed by the UN would come to Cambodia in order to monitor compliance of the different parties at war, also in order to address the humanitarian issues, make sure also that the conditions were conducive to organizing elections, and eventually also provide international funding for the reconstruction of Cambodia. So it was a very, very comprehensive agreement that led indeed to these elections that elected a democratic National Assembly, and that assembly agreed ultimately on a democratic government. At the end of this process, the United Nations withdrew, so I was here in Cambodia during the whole process. I stayed later on in Cambodia working for the European Union in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, providing support in terms of capacity building to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. At the time, Cambodia was not yet a member of ASEAN. It had not yet acceded to the Bali Treaty, and there was a process where Cambodians needed to have enough diplomats to fill the diplomatic postings in the various ASEAN countries. And that was a challenge, because at the time there were very few people who were educated and would meet the standards for becoming a diplomat. So I was part of that process where we built the capacity to make sure that this could be done. The mission lasted for 2 years, which is relatively short if you compare it to other peacekeeping operations in the world. If you look at Kosovo, it started in '99, and the peacekeeping mission is still there. I have worked in Kosovo. I've also worked in the Congo. The mission there started at the end of the 90s, and there is still no peace in a country like the Congo. And so it is in so many other countries where the UN is. Unfortunately, they are not yet at peace. In Cambodia, within 2 years, it managed to succeed. So I really regard this as a success. Yes, I have worked for another 2 years here in Cambodia as part of that institutional support to the government of Cambodia. And I have ultimately also worked another year, mainly from Brussels, but for Cambodia, providing European funding to support the voter registration for the 1998 elections. It was important at the time because Cambodia at the time didn't have the funding to pay for the registration of the voters, and this is a fundamental step prior to the organization of elections. The elections of 1998 were organized by Cambodia itself, and these elections were deemed successful and democratic as well. So this is also something that really shows that Cambodia is able to organize things on its own. Well, I have heard this from many people that Cambodia is unique. I have heard this from ambassadors. They wouldn't give details about that, but I feel the same, that Cambodia is quite different than many other countries. I think it may relate to its culture, to its people. People are very pleasant to interact with, and they extend their friendship to foreigners in a way few other countries do. And I think this is really something that is part of the Cambodian culture, and that is what I like in Cambodia. It wasn't difficult, but I was interested and I was very curious, because when I was a student in the 70s, Cambodia was always in the news because of the war. And first there was the war, then there was the Khmer Rouge, and when the Khmer Rouge were uprooted by the intervention of Vietnam forces, Cambodia fell under sanctions, and so there has been a period of about 15 to 20 years where Cambodia was really sidelined from the international community. And at the time I was very young, and I had seen this day after day on television, in the news, and it really developed for me an interest for this country. Well, when I arrived here in Cambodia, at least here in Phnom Penh, the situation was not like what you see now here, with so many skyscrapers and buildings and so on. It was rather kind of empty space, and at the time security was a serious problem. It was very rare to see people outside Phnom Penh, outside in the street, walking at 8 o'clock in the evening, because it was unsafe to walk even on Monivong Boulevard. So the situation has seriously improved in terms of security. I remember also that when I was living here in Phnom Penh, there was a family living in a wooden house, and the house burned during the night, and nobody could really help them because there was even no fire brigade to extinguish the fire. There were international organizations dealing with humanitarian issues, but they were not here to deal with individuals. So a few of us, we contributed with some funds and some donations, but obviously this was not enough for them to recover, and I felt really sorry about that. What I regard as a genuine success is what Cambodia managed to do by itself after the mission of the UN Transition Authority in Cambodia. The Khmer managed to build their country, and you just have to look around here what they managed to build, and to me this is really fantastic to see that there are so many schools. I know streets in Phnom Penh where you have more than 3 schools in the same street. I see also that health has considerably improved, job opportunities also. So these type of things in terms of livelihood is for sure a progress, especially if you compare to the many peacekeeping operations I have been to. And I wouldn't be able to compare Cambodia with these countries because there hasn't been any way to seriously improve, at least at the speed and the pace Cambodia managed to deal with its own affairs. They took it in their hands to reconstruct their country, and this is something that I really find a fantastic achievement. In the past, very few people would dare to come to Cambodia, precisely because it was unsafe. I remember that the Bangkok Post used to refer to Cambodia as a war-torn country, where only adventurers would dare to come. Nowadays, you have tourists coming to Siem Reap by the millions. I remember also that at the time there were only a few flights landing at Po Sheng Tong Airport. Nowadays it's really an international airport with planes landing every 5 minutes or so. So Cambodia is really becoming a country that is a modern and booming country. Well, it is absolutely true that in terms of economic growth, the progress is striking, and that is positive. But there is a difference between wealth and prosperity. If you look at the figures I read just a few days ago, that Cambodia or Phnom Penh has 1.2 million people, but there are 1.3 million cars in Phnom Penh. And there is something crazy to have more cars than you have people. That would mean that there are more cars than people in this city. And that means also that you have people owning more than one car. That is not normal. What I hear also from Cambodians of my generation is that they feel to some extent disregarded by the younger generation because they are only interested, or many of them are far too much interested by money and by driving an expensive car. I know that a number of families split now over inheritance and that sort of stuff, and that is very worrying because that is not the Cambodia and the Khmer that I've learned to know over the years. But yet I'm really hopeful that Cambodia will overcome this difficult path because there must be harmonious relations between the old generation and the new one. And if people have consideration for their traditions, I think they will be able to overcome that. I think Cambodia as a whole and the Cambodian people should be really proud of what they have managed to achieve, because if you look, I'm just talking as a foreigner walking through the streets of Phnom Penh or even traveling in various cities in Cambodia, I see outstanding results and I see a determination for progress. When I enter a coffee bar, I see youngsters working, using the space and internet as a co-working area, and this is really something that I don't see as often in Western countries. The youth is very dynamic here, and I find this is really something that is a matter of hope.